Let's talk emergency braking while you're riding your motorcycle and what's the best way to ensure that you brake as quickly as possible in an emergency situation while riding your bike. So first, I want to go through some of the physics so we can all be on the same page how typically a bike works when you're using your front and back brake. So to start with, we're going to talk about traction, and at the end, you'll see why it's so important that we're talking the front versus the back with traction as you're braking, especially in an emergency situation. So first, imagine your bike, you're not on it, you got both tires on the pavement. It's going to slide very easily, not a lot of traction. As you put weight on it, as you're sitting on it, or you have a passenger as well, the more weight, the more traction you have on those tires. Traction obviously being extremely important for braking and how quickly you can brake depending on your speed. So that's real important. Now let's talk distribution, which is basically weight distribution. A lot of bikes naturally more distribution on the back versus the front as you're sitting on it and obviously riding down the road. So for instance, let's say you've got 70% weight distribution on the back, 30% distribution on the front. Now, as you brake, especially as you use the front brake, the weight distribution is shifting to the front. And so therefore the front tire, right? As you're braking, especially in an emergency situation, you feel it. Your bike goes like this, and the shocks begin to move and contract as your weight shifts forward onto that front tire. Now that's real important. Why? Because you're going from 70-30 to now, you could be 90-10 weight distribution wise, 90% on the front tire. So what does that mean? You're relying a lot on that traction on the front tire for your emergency braking and braking in general. So that's real important, using that front brake as your weight distribution is changing. This is why when you look at your bike, the front brake is often way more powerful on most of these bikes than the back. Often have 2 discs on the front tire and only 1 disc on the back for this exact reason. A lot of folks, especially early on riding a motorcycle, don't realize this. It's not the back brake, back tire, and the traction there that is the most reliable for emergency braking. Now, it's law of inertia and kind of your weight shifting, right? This is what's real important here, and I'm hoping the takeaway from this video is. But we're not saying don't rely at all on your back brake. That's not the point. Just because your front brake is the most effective, you still want to use your back brake too, right? Every inch matters in an emergency braking situation. So you want front and back. But there's some technique to it that I've heard over the years from experts, and we've gotten into battles over this in court and those sorts of things. So that's how I'm real familiar with how all this works and what the experts say is the right way to emergency brake. If you're in a lawsuit situation, which is what I deal with, this oftentimes comes up because they're blaming the biker every single way they can to say, yeah, but you didn't brake correctly. That's why you ran into the vehicle. It wasn't them turning left in front of you, blah, blah, blah. So know those things. How do you deal with it? Well, one of the big takeaways I got from an expert that I thought, just kind of made all the sense in the world is they say, learn and use the technique even in non-emergency situations. Why? Because it's muscle memory. If you start doing the technique that we're talking about here today that I'll give to you toward the end, and you do it in an everyday scenarios every single time you brake, then you're gonna do it naturally in an emergency situation. Emergency situation, you're not thinking, you're just quickly doing whatever you can to avoid that object in front of you. If your muscle memory is to apply the front and back brake correctly, given inertia and weight, therefore traction, you are giving yourself the best shot to use all of the power of your braking, specifically the front brake, to stop your bike before running into that object that now has appeared in front of you. So do it every single time. Now, what does that mean? It means use your right foot on the brake all all the way through the stop with no padding. Be in the first gear by the time you stop. Practicing these things over and over. I've written all these down. Do it right every single time. You'll do it right in the emergency situation that we're talking about here today. Oftentimes we're asked, and I've had bikers doing this, what about downshifting using the engine as a way to brake? It works for the back tire, so you're relying on the back tire that has less traction, therefore less ability to get you stopped in time. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not as efficient. So number one, you don't want to use it solely, obviously. I think everybody knows that. Don't just downshift, don't just use your engine to stop, especially in an emergency situation. But you're also relying on the tire that has the least traction because you're going forward, the inertia, all that we talked about. So be very careful just doing downshifting and using your engine to slow your bike down. Not very effective. I get also asked a lot, and we fight over this a lot in court, and experts therefore have talked about it, and I think it's real important. Don't lay your bike down. If you practice these techniques on emergency braking by doing it every time you brake naturally, you won't need to lay your bike down. Laying your bike down, one, traction's horrible. Sliding with your bike, the metal, plastic, the leather you have on your body does not give a lot of traction to stop. So you're gonna slide. You also have no control over where your bike goes, where your body goes, and most importantly, where you're gonna end up. So especially if you're in a high traffic area, now you're sliding across the pavement. You're gonna wind up somewhere. You could get run over by another vehicle. You could still slide into that object in front of you, now with your body instead of your bike first. It's not what you want to do. You want to apply this emergency braking technique to hopefully stop your vehicle in time and swerve. That's better. Braking and swerving versus laying bike down. And these split-second decisions. So you've got to be ready, got to have your mindset ready for these things because you never know when that dumb vehicle is going to make a left-hand turn in front of you, or they're going to stop suddenly, change lanes and not see you. You don't know when this is going to happen to you. I had one client, a tractor trailer of all things, turns left out of a commercial driveway right in front of the biker. His instinct was lay the bike down versus hitting the brakes. And his injuries ended up being third-degree burns from road rash all over 60% of his body. So don't lay the bike down. That needs to be the big thing. Don't lay the bike down. All right, so what is the emergency braking technique in full? So in sum, what we're talking about, use both brakes, but you want to rely the most on your front brake. So what you want to do, and what experts have told me, is you want to apply more and more pressure to the front brake, apply a little bit of pressure to the back brake, but that front brake, you want to apply more and more pressure as you're going forward, more weight's getting put on that, the traction's getting better, you're getting closer and closer to that 90% plus traction ratio, and the front brake, it's the most powerful brake, that's where the traction's going to be naturally. It all makes sense. More and more pressure until you get all the way down, and you want to obviously be shifting at the same time. So you're doing all this and you're shifting down, all of that at the same time. This gives you the most friction, which is the key element to stopping, is friction. Get that tire to stop the momentum. So if you practice that, obviously you don't have to do it as quick and as hard, natural stopping every day, but if you practice the more pressure on front brake, less pressure on the rear brake, downshifting so you're in first by the time you're stopping, practice that every single time you naturally stop in a non-emergency situation, you'll have it down to a science by the time you unfortunately have an emergency situation. And we know most of us are going to have an emergency situation or two over the course of your riding career. You've got to be proficient in emergency braking. It is a lifesaver. So the one thing to talk about there, to sum it up, is what's the difference between emergency braking and normal braking? It's just what I said. It's the same technique every single time, just a little bit less pressure. Obviously, you don't have to do it as hard on that front and rear brake, but do that technique so you practice it over and over naturally, becomes muscle memory for you in that emergency situation, because you're not going to have the time to think, oh, what was the technique? You have to have it down pat. It's like most of us have done sports. It's that muscle memory, how to throw fast, how to throw the ball downfield, how to bat. All of those things becomes muscle memory by practicing over and over and over and over and and over. So I hope this helps you with emergency braking and what the experts say is the proper technique to give yourself the best chance to avoid disaster. Thanks so much, guys, for watching this video. We've got a ton of others on our channel that goes through safety issues like emergency braking in the other areas. We also touch on some law for bikers and that sort of thing. Comment below. Tell me what you think about these techniques. If you guys have learned any others from experts or just a long career of motorcycle riding, I love to hear your thoughts. We're here to help everybody. So the more we participate and help each other, I think it really would help everyone out there to stay as safe as possible.